A forbidden orchard is dying in plain sight, and, well, most people will never know it existed. There is a quiet tragedy unfolding in abandoned 19th-century graveyards. Among sinking headstones and rusted iron fences stand gnarled apple and pear trees planted by pioneers who understood food security in ways modern society has forgotten. These were not ornamental plantings. They were calorie reserves, cider sources, winter keepers, and insurance against crop failure. Today, many of those fruit varieties have been declared extinct by commercial standards. They no longer appear in nursery catalogues. They're absent from supermarket shelves. Yet some of them are still alive, clinging to life in what can only be called ghost orchards. If we do not act to preserve their genetics through grafting, they will vanish permanently. These graveyard orchards were planted for survival, not decoration. In the 1800s, fruit trees were strategic assets. Apples in particular were essential because they provided reliable calories, fermented into safe drinking cider, and stored for months in root cellars. Many frontier families planted orchards near burial grounds because cemeteries were protected spaces unlikely to be ploughed or developed. The trees became living memorials and practical food sources at the same time. Unlike modern monoculture varieties bred for appearance and shipping durability, pioneer apples were selected for resilience. Some tolerated harsh winters. Others resisted regional pests. Many were bred for high tannin or sugar content suitable for cider and preservation. Over the 20th century, industrial agriculture narrowed diversity to a handful of commercially profitable cultivars. Thousands of regional apples have disappeared from commerce. When old homesteads were abandoned, their orchards died with them. Commercial extinction does not always mean biological extinction. When historians or agricultural records label a fruit variety extinct, they often mean it is no longer grown commercially or registered in the active nursery trade. That does not necessarily mean every tree has died. Apple trees can survive for over a century. A hollow trunk does not mean genetic death. If a tree produces viable one-year wood, its genetics can be preserved. This is where the work becomes urgent. Old trees decline rapidly once disease, storm damage, or neglect accelerates decay. A lightning strike or a single season of severe drought can finish what time has already weakened. Recovery depends on identifying these trees before they collapse entirely. You can begin locally. Study historical plat maps, agricultural censuses, and old nursery catalogues from your region. Many county historical societies maintain archived records that list orchards or common fruit varieties from the 19th century. When you identify a cemetery dating to that era, visit respectfully and observe the tree species present. Mature apple trees have distinctive bark texture and branching patterns. During fruiting season, note harvest timing, size, coloration and taste profile. Careful documentation increases the chance of later identification. Grafting is the only reliable way to preserve these lost varieties. Planting seeds from an old apple tree will not replicate the original fruit. Apples do not grow true from seed because of genetic recombination. The only way to preserve a specific variety is through cloning by grafting. This involves attaching a cutting, known as a scion, from the old tree onto a compatible rootstock. Timing is, absolutely critical. Scion wood should be collected during winter dormancy, typically from late January through early March, depending on, your local climate. Choose a healthy one-year growth about the thickness of a pencil. Cut sections roughly 8 to 12 inches long, making sure there are several visible buds. Be sure to label immediately to avoid any confusion. Then wrap in slightly damp paper, seal in a plastic bag, and refrigerate until grafting season. In early spring, obtain suitable rootstock that's adapted to your soil and climate. Disease-resistant rootstock, you see, increases long-term survival. The whip and tongue graft is honestly one of the most reliable techniques when scion and rootstock diameters match. Make a long-angled cut on both pieces. Create a small tongue slit to interlock them. Align the cambium layers carefully and bind everything firmly with grafting tape. Seal any exposed cuts with grafting wax to prevent moisture loss. Within weeks, successful grafts will push new growth, signalling that a once-lost lineage now has a future. For experienced orchardists, grafting multiple scions onto a single mature tree allows rapid evaluation of fruit quality without waiting years for a young tree to mature. This method, known as top working, can, accelerate preservation efforts significantly. Ethical recovery, it really ensures these orchards are preserved responsibly. Cemeteries, they're not abandoned wastelands at all. They are sacred spaces governed by law and, of course, community memory. So always seek written permission before collecting scion wood. Many caretakers, truth be told, appreciate the effort to preserve local agricultural heritage when approached respectfully. And don't forget, share your documentation and offer to provide grafted trees back to the community as living memorials. Accurate record keeping is honestly essential. Photograph trees, record trunk circumference, approximate age, fruit characteristics, and naturally the location. Collaboration with regional fruit exploration groups can really help confirm identification. DNA testing these days is increasingly available for apples, adding scientific validation to your field observations. The broader survival lesson, lies in genetic diversity and caloric resilience. Heirloom fruit varieties were often chosen for their storage life and caloric density, rather than just cosmetic perfection. Some apples, for instance, can be stored for as long as 6 months without any refrigeration at all. Others were ideal for drying, concentrating their sugars into, portable calories. In preparedness planning, diversity really does serve as insurance against disease and climate instability. A single blight can devastate uniform plantings, but a diverse orchard, it spreads the risk. Recovering and grafting old cemetery fruit trees, it's not simply a historical curiosity. It is, in fact, practical resilience. Each preserved variety expands the genetic toolkit available for future growers. Traits such as drought tolerance, pest resistance, and storage longevity may prove absolutely invaluable in the coming decades. The past is offering us one last harvest, if we are willing to act. These ghost orchards represent a fusion of memory and survival science. The pioneers who planted them did so with a good deal of foresight. They understood that food security required adaptation, diversity, and, patience. Their trees still stand as living testaments to that wisdom. If this kind of investigative history and hands-on preservation speaks to you, do consider subscribing to the channel and sharing this episode with fellow history enthusiasts, orchardists, and preparedness-minded viewers. The next resilient scion waiting to be grafted could honestly be the difference between another lost chapter and a living legacy restored.